Hello everybody. How you guys doing? This is weird. How's everybody doing? I got a message from Chana to move the laundry before I start teaching, and I see that in the picture you see it, so give me just 1 second. Okay, guys, so I hope people are here. Can't tell, but I'm supposed to. I was originally supposed to talk about Yom Ha'atzmaut, and the truth is, just about an hour ago, the siren went off here in Israel for Yom Ha'zikaron. And I think that I'm going to talk about Yom Ha'atzmaut, but I think it's hard. It's too hard on the night of Yom Ha'zikaron to talk about Yom Ha'atzmaut. So I think I'm going to have to talk about Yom Ha'atzmaut first, and then at the end I'll kind of bring it towards, Yom Ha'zikaron first, the Memorial Day for Fallen Soldiers, and then I will talk about Yom Ha'atzmaut just a bit at the end. So I am somebody who, by the way, if you're watching, you want to say hi, feel free to write something, tell me that you're watching. But anyway, to all my former students, I love you guys and I miss you guys. And if you're falling asleep, just stand up, as you know. And I hope you guys are having a great time over there in the U.S. and come visit us soon. Anyway, so I'm somebody who, you guys know I moved to Israel when I was about 22. And for that reason and for other reasons, I'm very lucky. I don't have a personal connection to Yom Ha'zikaron, and that I don't have a friend or a loved one that that has fallen in the service of the State of Israel. Nor do I know anyone personally that was killed in a terrorist attack, which is amazing for me. I'm very lucky in that I've lived here for 10 years, and I have friends that go to the army and do miluim and do reserve duty, but I don't know anyone, which is amazing for me, and I really thank God, of course. But that also means that on a personal level, Yom Ha'zikaron, while I see my countrymen having an incredible, deep, moving, and intense experience, sometimes it's a little bit harder for me, even though, as you guys know, I'm pretty passionate about, the State of Israel and its history and Jewish history. I still feel like, because of my own life, my personal connection is not, where I ideally would like it to be. So, hi, honey. Anyway, guys, whoever's here, just say hi so I know that you're here. I don't know who's here. Anyway, so there's a ceremony going on right now in my moshav. I'm not there. I know I have to babysit. The kids are sleeping. And there is one guy who grew up in my moshav. It's a pretty small place. Only 200 people live here. And one of the, kind of like the first generation kids was killed in the beginning of the Second Intifada, guarding a property in East Jerusalem. Or not in East Jerusalem, excuse me. And so people in my moshav also everyone here has a personal connection. They grew up with him, but I never met him. And so I have always this a little bit of difficulty totally connecting to this day. So I want to just tell you what I did today, because what I did today with my students was really helped me, and I think was an incredible day. And I'll tell you a little bit about the story, because it's something that I haven't taught to any of my former students, and I'll tell you the story now. And it's a place that I hope you guys find the time to go to next time you're in Israel. It's one of the most famous battle sites in all of Israel, and it's a place called Givat Tachmoshet, which means Ammunition Hill. Now, at the end of this, hey Benji, at the end of this, I invite everybody to go to YouTube, and you don't have to do it now, you can if you want to, but there's a song, a very, very famous Israeli song called Givat Tachmoshet. It's written about Givat Tachmoshet, and the song's amazing. First of all, it's beautiful music, but it's also, as the song goes, There's beautiful poetic lines, but there are 3 points where there's testimony given about the battle itself. And the song, and as I was walking through the site today with my students for the first time ever, I was once there, maybe 10 years ago, but I really didn't know much about it. And so for the first time I really knew what I was talking about, and I realized that the song itself really, as you walk through the site, you can actually feel and see and touch what the song is talking about. And so for me, for somebody who sometimes has a hard time with the personal connection on Yom HaZikaron, to be in Givat Tachmoshet, which was the most difficult battle for Jerusalem in the 6-day war, when the siren went off an hour ago, and you stand at attention and you think, what am I going to think about right now? For me, having just been this morning at Givat Tachmoshet, where 36 Israeli soldiers gave their lives, and I'll explain to you more just how crazy that is, but it was really, for me, to be there today on the morning, Erev Yom HaZikaron was extremely powerful, and I'm really glad I had that opportunity. So on a story, I'm just going to read you a quote from Moshe Dayan. Moshe Dayan, as you guys know, is one of the more famous and well-known Israeli war heroes, and he says, "The battle on Ammunition Hill was the hardest in the war against the Jordanians. It's not because of the difficulty or the high price that we paid, but because of the personal heroism of all the soldiers. It is an unforgettable page in Israel military history." Now, when you are at this site and when you learn about Givat Tachmoshet, the Battle of Ammunition Hill, you realize that the overall message here, aside from the bravery of the Israeli soldiers, is simply how horrible and crazy war is, and how everybody should do whatever they can to avoid it. And there's no doubt about that. And anyone who's been in my class knows that, well, we do tell war stories because I think that they deserve to be told, and people's stories deserve to be told. I also think that it's important to know that we don't glorify war, and certainly not in Israel. And I think some of you guys know this, but I'll just mention it, that in Israel there is not one site that is a victory monument in all of Israel. We've won a lot of battles here in Israel, and not one of these places is commemorated with a victory monument. There are only memorials to fallen soldiers in Israel. There are no victory monuments in Israel. And this site, which I think could easily have been a site that commemorated a victory because we won an incredible battle, is not at all. It's a memorial site. And when we were there today, they were setting up for their Tekes Yom HaZikaron, the Yom HaZikaron ceremony that they're having right now. So the story of the battle is like this. I'll tell you just a few details of the story. The reason why Givat Tachmoshet was important was because it protected essentially the road to Har Sophim, to Mount Scopus, where Hebrew University was, and also the hospitals up there. And Har Sophim, basically, so we're talking about after 1948 in the War of Independence, Har Sophim, Mount Scopus, where we all sat together and sang Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, if you remember. That was an island, essentially, of Israeli territory, surrounded on all sides by Jordanian territory. Right? The War of 1948 ended with Jordan occupying the West Bank, and Har Sophim was completely surrounded on all sides. But we still had it, and we didn't give it up. And in theory, there were ways to get to arrangements that were made so that people could get in and out sometimes. So, the 6-day war, as we know, to give you just a quick refresher, you have a situation where, for various reasons, essentially, Syria and Egypt have put their armies under joint command, and Israel knows that if the war breaks out now, that there is going to be a two-front war, which is extremely difficult to deal with, especially with the Syrians being so high up and the Egyptians outnumbering us by so far. And then they basically bring Jordan into that, and now there's these 3 armies under joint command, and this was the time where they called up all the reserves, and there was 2 weeks called the waiting period, in which everybody in Israel was just waiting for what people called the Second Holocaust, and people really, we learned about it in class, and anyone who remembers this, but, people were told to fill sandbags and put them in their windows, and people were told to dig up ditches in parks because the cemeteries simply wouldn't hold all the dead. And you can imagine what that did for this country. People really thought that this was it. We had a 19-year run, and that was really nice, but there was simply no way we were going to survive this. the war didn't turn out that way, as we know. And the main reason was because our Air Force mounted the preemptive strike, Operation Focus, and crippled the air forces of the entire Middle East, really, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, especially Egypt, and that allowed us to win this war more than anything else. And in the middle of the war, despite pleading with Jordan, if you stay out of the war, then we won't start the war. Stay out of the war, stay out of the war. Jordan is going to come into the war anyway. So they're coming into so anyway, Jordan comes into the war, and immediately Israel realizes, oh my God, we better take Givat HaTachmoshet, this hill which controls the road to Har Sofim. If we don't get that road, then Har Sofim will easily be taken by the Jordanians because it was surrounded on all sides, and that's a huge loss for the state of Israel, and we have to not allow that to happen. And the battle is going to be so difficult because the fighters that were fighting there actually had no business fighting there at all. What do I mean by that? These were paratroopers that were trained to fight against Egypt in the desert, and they had maps of where they were going to fight against Egypt in the desert, in the Sinai Peninsula, and they were ready to fight Egypt in the desert in the Sinai Peninsula. But what happened was, because our Air Force, the Air Force strike, Operation Focus, was so successful, the Sinai fell in 2 days, and nobody expected that. And then the Jordanians got into the war, and people realized, oh my God, we need as many forces as possible in Jerusalem, and so they basically, as quickly as possible, they took these paratroopers away, on buses, away from the Sinai Peninsula, drove them to Jerusalem, where all of a sudden we realized we were going to be fighting a battle, which we weren't ready for. And so these guys show up to this battle at 2:30 in the morning. Okay, it's pitch black, there's no moon, it's pitch black at 2:30 in the morning, and they're told that they're going to be taking Givat HaTachmoshet, Ammunition Hill. Now, there's a building in the beginning, which is this British Police Academy. This is where the British used to hold their ammunition back in the day. That's why it's called Ammunition Hill. Anyway, there's the Police Academy, which is where the Israeli intelligence assumed all the Jordanians would be holed up. And we would send 2 companies, that's 200 men, to attack that building, and 100 to take the hill. That was the first disaster. The first disaster was that we assumed there were 30 people on the hill. 1 platoon, essentially, on the hill, 30 people. When in fact there were 6. Not 30 people, but 200 people. Okay? Military logic tells you, basically, the way military strategy works is that you need a force of about 3 times more than the defending force. If you're on offense and they're dug in and they have trenches and they know the site and you don't, so you have to get 3 times as many soldiers in order to take that objective. That's basic military doctrine. And so they had 30 people, so we took 1 company, 100 people, and that should be enough. And this company of the 66th Battalion of paratroopers is essentially told, go take at 2:30 in the morning, Givat HaTachmoshet. They assume it's only 30 people. It shouldn't be that hard. Because they were supposed to fight in the Sinai Desert, they had no maps. They had no training to fight in Jerusalem. They didn't really know the site. They didn't really know anything, but they were told this is where they were needed, and so they went to go do it. Now, the first disaster I told you was the faulty intelligence. The fact that while we thought there were 30 people guarding the site, in fact there were 200 Jordanian soldiers. And the second disaster is it's the middle of the night, they don't know where they're going, and there's basically 3 trenches, okay? You can imagine it's a site, I mean, without a picture, it's a bit difficult to deal with, but imagine you can enter this hill, and you start to walk up the hill, and there's basically like 3 trenches, okay? There's one on this side, one in the center, and one on this side. There's the eastern, the central, and the western trench. Now, the western trench overlooks Jewish Jerusalem, and so that was the edge of the site. And that was the most important trench to take. Now, it was 2:30 in the morning, and these guys... the first guy was supposed to go in the western trench, and he doesn't know where he's going, and he accidentally goes in the middle one. The second guy was supposed to go one to the right of him, and so he, instead of going in the central, goes in the eastern one. And so all of a sudden, the most important trench is now, nobody's in it. 2 different platoons are in the wrong trench, and the third guy, who was supposed to go in the far one, realizes there's confusion, doesn't know what to do, and follows the second guy into the central one. And so now you have nobody in the most important trench, the western one, and 60 soldiers in the central, and 30 in the eastern, where we needed nobody, essentially. It's the middle of the night, and they're going through, and the trenches are so... I was just there this morning, guys. It's so thin. We had our backpacks on, and we could barely walk through the entire thing. And you can imagine what it's like for a soldier who has full combat gear, and a vest, and a backpack with 50 kilos on it. And essentially, you're going through, and you can't move, okay? And essentially, you have 60 soldiers... 59 of whom are totally wasted because only the first person can do anything. All the 59 behind him are essentially useless because it's a single file line. and he can't do anything. And so we have 30 soldiers attacking one side of the site, where we didn't need them, and 60 in the middle, where we could use them, but 59 of them, because the trenches are too small, can't do anything. They immediately are pinned down by machine gun fire from all directions. They called this the triangle of fire. There were 3 machine gun nests pinning them down. And these guys essentially had to crawl through the trenches, and we had to put our heads down, and it was crazy. Walking through there this morning, thinking what it would be like to not be able to poke your head out. And as you're walking through the trenches, every few steps, there's another Jordanian bunker where we had no idea where they were. And all of a sudden, as you turn the corner, there's a little room there with 3 Jordanian soldiers, and people are getting killed as they go. Meanwhile, the first thing that happens is one of the company commanders said, one of the platoon commanders says, send 7 guys, says, you 7 guys, go take out that machine gun nest. And 7 guys immediately, they jump out of the trenches. As you can imagine, that's a crazy thing to tell somebody to do. These 7 guys jump out of the trenches, run towards the machine gun nest, and they're all 7 cut down immediately. Okay? Then the Samach Mempei, his backup, realizes there's confusion, they don't know what's going on. He jumps out of the trench to go find one of the other guys in one of the other trenches. So you have 7 guys that have just been killed. The second in command is running now to find one of the other commanders to talk to him. And immediately the first one, who's the commander of that platoon, gets shot and killed. So the first commander is now dead. The 7 guys are dead. The one guy's running around trying to find somebody else. Yochanan Miller, who's just a 19-year-old soldier. How old are you guys now? Some of you guys are 19, 18, whatever. A 19-year-old soldier takes command of this platoon and says, okay, now I'm in charge. He starts giving orders, telling people, go over there, and a second later, he's shot. So the first in command is shot. The second in command is nowhere to be found. The guy who just took the reins has now just been shot. 7 other guys have been shot. Finally, the second in command runs and finds his friend in the other trench, and as he's about to go in, and everybody at this point at the same time realizes, oh my god, there's way more than 30 people here, and we're in the wrong trenches, and it's a total disaster. And as he realizes this, he's about to explain this to the guy that he finally found. He's shot and falls into the trench, and he's caught by the commander that was in that trench. At this point, the commander in the center says, we desperately need help. Okay, and he calls for backup, and they bring in a full other company, and they tell him, no matter what you guys do, go in the western trench. And so then 100 soldiers show up, and they enter the western trench after this disaster is already happening. That's when the song begins. I'll read you just a few lines from the song. Again, I want to recommend that after this you listen to the song. It's really, it's incredible. So he says, it was the morning of the second day of the war of Jerusalem. The horizon paled in the east. We were at the climax of the battle on Ammunition Hill. We'd been fighting there for 3 hours. A fierce battle was underway. It was fatal. The Jordanians fought stubbornly. It was a position fortified in an unbelievable manner. At a certain point in the fight, there remained next to me only 4 soldiers. We went up there with a force of 2 platoons. I don't know where the others were because the connection with the platoon commander was cut off at the beginning of the battle. At that moment, I thought everyone else was killed. And at this point, this commander, by the way, thought that he and his 4 soldiers were the last ones left on the hill. He thought that everybody else was dead. And the truth of the matter is, in the end, you're going to see he wasn't actually that far off. As they're going, every few minutes, the first in line is going to get shot. And they have to then put this guy above them and carry them to the back of the line because they can't move until they move him. But it's still a single file line because there's no way to move. There's these thin walls, everybody's crunched in there, and nobody can move. And so they're picking. And as they go a few more meters, the first in line is shot, and they have to pick up the guy and carry him back to. Again, this happens over and over and over again. What took me and my class to walk about 45 seconds took the Israeli paratroopers on this night 4.5 hours. It took me a 45-second walk. It took them 4.5 hours to do that because they were so pinned down. So at some point, a grenade was thrown from the outside. Miraculously, we weren't hit. I was afraid the Jordanians would throw more grenades. Somebody had to run from above and cover, so that he needed somebody to basically jump out of the trench, be totally exposed, and cover them so nobody could throw a grenade into the trench. If a grenade would fall in the trench, that would be the end of everybody. And so he says, this incredible line, I didn't have time to ask who would volunteer. I simply sent Eitan. Eitan didn't hesitate for a moment. He climbed up and began to fire his machine gun. Now I want you to try to think what that would mean. What does it mean to not hesitate? You've just been sent on a suicide mission. You are about to jump out of a trench where there's 3 machine guns shooting everybody. You now have to run totally exposed. And it still says, the song says, and the testimony says, he didn't hesitate for a second. I don't know how that's possible, whether it's the heat of battle, or it's the Israeli army training, or simply knowing that there's no choice and that he wanted to help his brothers. I don't know what it is. The idea that this Eitan didn't hesitate for a second, I can't even imagine what that means, to be honest. It's a crazy line. Anyway, this Eitan runs and starts firing his machine gun, and that allowed them now to advance more quickly because he was covering them from the outside. And he says we covered 30 meters like that. It was just about a few minutes that Eitan was there, and he says, I had to yell at him, don't get in front of us, come back to our line. And as he's jumping back, it says, as he's jumping back into the trench, Eitan was shot and fell in. And Eitan, with his life, gave them 30 more meters, approaching the main bunker, which had most of the Jordanian soldiers in it. So they advanced 30 more meters because of this guy, sacrificing his life, who, by the way, after he died, received Israel's highest medal, the Medal of Valor. They advance slowly again in this trench, and eventually they finally get to the major bunker. Now the major bunker is crazy because they get there. These 3 soldiers, one of whom was alone, by the way, shows up there from the eastern trench out of nowhere. He goes inside and he immediately sees he thought there'd be maybe 1-2 guys. There's a bunch of Jordanian soldiers inside. He runs out as fast as he can before they can shoot him. He tells other people who see him, get back here, don't follow me, it's too... And then he stays there and realizes, if I don't take this bunker, then we're not going to take this hill. And so he has this crazy plan, and it talks about it in the song. It says the Jordanians had a system. They would throw a grenade, they'd fire a machine gun burst, and then they would rest for a second. And during that resting, a soldier basically crawled all the way to the bunker, okay? And he was being thrown during that rest period between the machine gun bursts from the Jordanians. They would throw him a few bags of TNT, of dynamite. Now, why were they? At first, they tried to use a bazooka. Okay, you read about it in the song. They see this bunker, they take a bazooka, they shoot the bazooka, and it bounces right off of it. It barely scratches it. And so, the bazooka's not doing anything. And they decide to throw these bags of TNT. And so basically, this guy is laying next to the bunker. If anybody comes out of that bunker, this guy's dead instantly. But he's laying there, and every few seconds they're throwing him a bag of TNT. And this guy, who's not a trained explosives, he's not trained in explosives, so they're trying to teach him, as he's doing this, they're teaching him how to set up the TNT so it will explode. This is a 2-month course in the army. He's getting it in the line of fire, while laying on a bunker, while setting up the TNT itself, and worrying about not getting shot. And this guy spends minutes laying on this bunker, and he throws these bags of TNT, and eventually, there's enough TNT there, he puts them all together, and they blow up the bunker. And once they blow up the bunker, the Jordanians come out, everybody with their hands up. The Jordanians have just surrendered Yom Ha'atzmaut, and the battle is over. It was 4.5 hours. So you could walk the entire site in about a minute and a half. It took the Israeli soldiers 4.5 hours to take it. Now, I hope I try to give you just a sense of what the battle itself is like. 36 people died, but it's really more incredible than that because the end of the song, I'm just going to read you the verse and I'll explain to you what I mean. He says, we returned to the city. 7. Smoke arose from the hill. The sun in the east rose higher on Ammunition Hill. We returned to the city. 7 from Ammunition Hill. 7 people. Out of the 200 soldiers that were fighting in Ammunition Hill, 7 were left unscathed. Okay? Meaning, in terms of dead and wounded, dead we know 36 people fell there. Everybody else essentially was wounded. 7 were left healthy at the end of this battle. 7 soldiers total. That's approximately somewhere between 90, I don't know the exact math, 93, 97. The stat usually given is a 97% casualty rate at Ammunition Hill. Guys, just to give you a sense for how incredible that is, most armies, it's essentially not just policy, but it's basic logic that if your unit is getting beaten, eventually you either surrender or you retreat. Most armies will retreat or surrender at somewhere between 21 and 31% casualties. Israel had 97% casualties in this battle and still kept going and won. 31%, that's when other armies will break and surrender or retreat, 97%, and people were leading the charge. Who was leading the charge? No officers left. All the officers, of course, were in the front. No officers left, and still, after 97% casualties, you had these last 7 healthy soldiers and a bunch of wounded soldiers who took this hill, because in their mind, this was what needed to be done to save Har Sofim. The name of the song, guys, is Givat HaTachmoshet. Givat HaTachmoshet, Ammunition Hill. So when I'm all done, you can listen to it on your own. The final soldier that was killed there was a guy named Ofer Feniger. Ofer Feniger is an incredible... First of all, he was born in a concentration camp, this guy. Born in a concentration camp. Died in the 6-Day War fighting for Jerusalem. So he writes this letter. In 1963, he was in his paratrooper training. I want you to read what he... I'm going to read to you what he wrote. He has this book. He was a poet, he was an artist, he was a teacher, as Ofer Feniger. He was an amazing guy in a lot of ways. And he has a book of letters to his girlfriend, Yael. If you remember in class, we also had, we read about the letters of Yoni and Netanyahu, and there's that famous letter to his girlfriend. So this is the letter of Ofer to his girlfriend. Listen to what he writes. This is what he's in training, grueling paratrooper training, in 1963. It says, Yael, I'm writing this to you because there's no other person in the world I can tell what's happening inside me right now. Whenever I attend our gatherings commemorating the Holocaust, I look into the eyes of those who were there and are now with us, and I see the terrible helplessness there. From amidst all the horror and helplessness, I feel a tremendous force surging up within me to be strong. Strong to the point of tears. Strong and sharp as a knife. That's what I want to be like. I want to know that those cavernous eyes will never again stare from behind electrified fences. For this, I need to be strong. If we are all strong, proud Jews, Jews will never again be led to the slaughter. We simply have to overcome everything. Ofer. He was killed 2 hours after the battle by a sniper from another hilltop, a French hill. But that letter, in which he basically says, for him, listen, in Israel right now, 1 week ago we had Yom HaShoah, right, commemorating the Holocaust. Now we have Yom HaZikaron, and tomorrow Yom Ha'atzmaut. And these 3 incredible days, which are in many ways the most intense week in all of Israel. I mean, you could say the high holidays, and this is like the high holidays that are not the religious high holidays, but these really cultural high holidays. And Ofer Feniger just connected all of them, right? He was born in a concentration camp, and he's talking about the fact that what's going to allow us to be strong as a Jewish people, and what's going to allow us to make sure that this kind of thing actually never happens again, if people like him are strong, and people like him fight. And he was one of these strong soldiers who kept fighting on through a crazy battle against the Jordanian army. So people always ask, and there's actually it's a crazy tension in Israel, right? We always go happy and sad very quickly, but Yom HaZikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut it's pretty insane how, on Yom HaZikaron, it's not like the U.S. Nobody's having barbecues. It's a very intense day. Nothing's even open. You have a ceremony at night and a ceremony in the morning. Yet by the afternoon, people are already preparing for their party for Yom Ha'atzmaut, because the very next, tonight is Yom HaZikaron, tomorrow night's already Yom Ha'atzmaut. And there's actually a movement of people trying to change that. They want a day between Yom HaZikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut, because it's too hard to go so quickly from one to the other. And while that hasn't happened yet, I don't know if it ever will. People sometimes need a reminder. Why is it that we do this crazy thing, so emotional, and then we have this crazy intense day, and then very intense and somber, and people think about it, and then the very next night they're partying like crazy. And the answer is simple, and we all know it. When you celebrate your independence and your freedom, you realize that the only reason we have that is because of brave soldiers who gave their lives for it. Israel, you should look this up also when we're all done. Israel just today is inaugurating for the first time a brand new, I think it's called the Memorial Hall at Har Herzl, which is the National Military Cemetery. I haven't been there yet because they're just opening it today, but it looks like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. It's an incredibly tasteful and sensitive tribute to all approximately 23,000 Israeli soldiers that have fallen in service of the State of Israel. I hope that everybody gets to Israel again very soon. And one of the things I hope, 2 things that we didn't see when you guys were here, all my former students I'm talking to right now, we didn't see Givat HaTachmoshet, and I hope you guys go there and check it out. And we certainly didn't see this Hall of Remembrance, or Memorial Hall, which is opening today. And I think it's important for all of us that we remember, we're all going to be partying tomorrow night. It's going to be, I'll show you something. Naveh, my son, came home with this from Gan. and we'll be hitting each other on the heads with this tomorrow and having the greatest time in the world. But today it's important to remember that when we party tomorrow, it's all because of today. It's all because of, nobody gets to party tomorrow in Israel, if not for the 23,000 soldiers who gave their lives for us. And being, like I said, so for me, somebody who doesn't have a personal connection, this morning to take my students for the first time to Givat Moshe and realize how intense and amazing and important this site is, was very, very, very powerful. So I really hope, guys, everybody here, thanks for watching. I hope you guys listen to the song. I really hope you guys come back soon and check out this site. It's a shame that we couldn't all have gone there together. But if we have a big reunion, just let me know. I'll try to meet you there. Teach everything I can. And please let me know, guys, either on my personal Facebook page or here. Give me some feedback, some comments. Let me know if you were watching this. I'm really curious. I miss you guys. And have a very meaningful Yom Ha'atzmaut and a happy Yom Ha'atzmaut tomorrow night. And to see you guys soon. Bye-bye.